Hello and welcome back to Rule the Game. In this video I'm going to show you how to play Cascadero, a game by Knizia and published by Bitewing games. This game is for 2 to 4 players, lasts about 45 to 60 minutes, and it's recommended starting at age 14. As usual, I'll first show you how to win the game, then I'll show you how to play the game, then I'll have some hints for your first game, and I'll show you how to set up the game. And if you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to my channel. But now, let's get started with Cascadero.
Rule the game.
Cascadero is a game where you continuously win victory points. On your board that you have here the victory point tracker that goes around the board. You start down here. The shields here are how you score, or that's your score marker. And you go around this field until the first person is able to get around it to get 50 points here. Once that is done, after this person's turn, the game's done. As usual, the person with the most points wins. However, that doesn't have to be the person who also passed the 50 mark line, because there's one more requirement that you have to fulfill. A player can only win the game if they have moved their cube of their color on their color track. So in this case, the blue cube needs to move all the way up top so that the blue person can actually win the game. Or the orange player here in this two-player game would have to also reach the top. Only who's reached the top on these two tracks, on their color tracks, can actually win the game. If no player is able to actually reach the top of their tracks, in that case, the person who has the most points wins a minor victory. Victory points are shown on the board with these green shields here that have numbers on them. The numbers on them are, of course, the victory points that you get if you fulfill one of those conditions. Now, if you want to see how you actually get to these points and how you can fulfill these requirements, let's move on to the gameplay section. Cascadero is a turn-based game. On their turn, players take one of their horses and place it on an empty field here on this game board here. You can only place figures on empty fields, not on these fields here that are considered towns, neither on fields that are already occupied by another figure. Once you've placed your figure, then you'll score the adjacent town that you have, if you can, and I'll show you what the requirements are to get scored. And then you might have some follow-up actions depending on how you did with your scoring. Now, let me show you a few moves here. First move, let's say the orange person here, the orange player, places their figure right here. They're now next to an orange town. And we will now check if they can score the orange town. To score a town where you just placed your figure, you need to fulfill two requirements. For one, this figure that you just placed must be in a group of at least 2 figures that are connected to the figure that you just placed. In this case, we have 3 connected to this one. So condition 1 is fulfilled. Condition 2 is that this figure has to have first contact to this town from this group here. Now these 3 here have not touched this town. This is the first one touching this town, so we can score this town. So what that means is that you can move your cube on the track of this color, which is in this case orange, so an orange cube, because I'm orange, I can move it on the orange track by 1. Now since the orange cube had already moved before because they had touched this town, they are already on field 1. Now with touching this town, they're going to move up here. As you can see, this cube has now here on the side over here, we're always looking at the left-hand side for everything that is colored here. We're looking to the right-hand side for the white track. But here for the orange track, we're looking to the left. Here you see 2 shields. The person who's first on this field will get 2 victory points. So the orange person gets here 2 victory points. A second person would only get 1 victory point when they get there. Then it's the next player's turn. We're playing a 2-player game. I'm blue now, and the blue player places their figure right here. Again, this figure is now right next to an orange town. This figure is also part of a group that has two or more figures in it. And because this figure is now part of the second group to make contact to this town, they can actually move their cube on the orange track by 2. So we move this blue cube by 2 to also end up on the same space as the other one was before. Technically, you could also score what's on this field, but there is nothing to win on this field. So we'll just get whatever is on this field right here. You get 1 victory point because orange was there first. So you move that up here. So what you see down here is if you're the first rider to make contact to a town, you'll move your cube by 1. If you're not the first, but the second later, you actually move it by 2. And as you can see over here, if I end up with a figure next to a town that has a herald, which is these white figures here, if I end up there, I actually get to move my cube 1 more. So let's do that with the orange player now. Let's say the orange player is placing their figure right here, next to this pink town, as you can see. This is a group of 2 or more figures, so this condition is fulfilled. This is their first contact to these fields, the first contact of this group, so they can score this field. They move on the pink track, they move the orange cube by 1 for being here and scoring it, but because there's a herald, they can move another one. So they move on to this field, which means they get another 2 victory points. Now let's do the same thing for the blue player. The blue player also places their figure right here. It is also part of a group of 2 or more figures, and also it's their first contact to this town. So they can now also score, and because they're the second figure to actually make contacts to this field, they can move by 2. And also because there's a herald, they can move a 3rd time. So on the pink track, I can move the blue cube here by 1, 2. In this case, they get 1 victory point because they're the second to get on here, and 3. Now, as you can see here, on this track here, in certain places there are folds in this thing. And in the fold, there is this seal. If you're the first player to end up here, and you actually have to end up on the fold, you can only get whatever the fold is offering to you. If you end up on it, you can take the seal to you, and you leave the cube right here. A second player who ends up in here later on, they will not get any seal anymore because it's gone. What they do get to do instead is that they can move one of their figures on here to another empty field that it's adjacent to them. In this case, they could potentially move, I don't know, maybe this one over here by 1. Now, what happens if this player decides to just place a single figure right here? Nothing will happen because while they're next to a yellow town, it is not a group of 2 or more figures, so they don't fulfill this condition. Now let's say blue had already had one here, which they couldn't score, but now they're placing a second one here. In this case now, blue has actually a group of 2. They are here for this group is here for the first time, so they get to score. They get the score as the second figure that has actually made contact to this town because there has already been here 1 orange one. So they will move up by 2, but because there's also herald on it, they can move up by 3. So blue would move up on the yellow track by 3. 1, 2, 3. In this case, because they didn't end up on the seal, they don't get to take the seal. By ending up on this field with my blue cube, I now get this bonus, which means that I can move one of my cubes by 1. It doesn't matter which one. I can move this one up. I can also take one on the bottom that can move up. You decide which one you want to move. Now the seal has a very important property that it counts as if it were a second figure. And what you can do, if it's your turn and you have a seal, you can place your figure on the seal anywhere. And in this case, it's considered as if it was two figures in that group. So that means that the orange can now score this town here, which is a pink town, and they can move here one forward. Now, as you can see, on this board here, you also have some forbidden spaces. What that means is that you can never get into that space. So if I'm here with my blue cube, I cannot move the blue cube on this orange track by one because I would end up in a forbidden space. I will always have to find a way to move it by two spaces to move up onto the next part of the board. You also have the rules down here again so that you see them. You see that if you place a single rider next to a town, you don't get anything. If you make second contact, like in case blue decides to place another one right here, they would be a group of two or more, but this one had already made contact to the yellow town before, so this one is not the first one to make contact. You can't score. You see here, if it's a group of two and you're there for the first time, you can score. If you have already a group that has connected and you place another group, you can score again. And if you have a seal, then you can also score it. So the rules are all done here for you to follow. Now let me explain to you a little bit more what happens on this track over here. Now you also see some symbols like this one. This one means if you end up on one of those fields, you can place another figure somewhere. Placing a figure is always the last action you do while scoring. So if you move up here, you will first get your 3 victory points and then you do another turn because the other turn might actually have some actions that follow it too. This should be all the ways you can actually get some additional actions over here, or you get extra points from this side. As you can see in the middle, there's some more victory points. Those are considered to be achievements, and you get them as soon as you fulfill the condition. Up on top, you have conditions that can only be fulfilled once by the first player who fulfills them. Those are conditions like you have 5 of your cubes are on this first symbol here. You see the symbol here? To gain these 3 victory points, you would have to have all of your cubes at least in this position. If you fulfill this, the first player who fulfills it takes their flag and puts their flag on top of this. Can only be claimed once. You get 3 victory points. Then there's this one here where you have to have 3 cubes that have reached or passed this symbol here, the 2 symbols actually. And this one here is the last one where you're the first one to reach the top here to reach this symbol. Next, this one here means that you need to have 3 seals in front of you. You can't have placed them like I did. Only if you have 3 seals in front of you can you claim these 3 victory points. Over here, you need to connect 5 towns of different colors with one group of figures. That's a rather long column that you have to build. But even more difficult is actually this one, where you need to have 3 times the same color also connected by one group. And then down here, we have achievements that can be fulfilled by everybody. Once a player achieves the fulfillment, they place their flag on top, and same even for the second player who achieves this. And of course, every time you achieve here something, you then get your points right away on the point tracker. These here are if you connect 2 towns of the same color with a group, so in this case 2 blue ones, 2 yellow ones, 2 orange ones, 2 pink ones, and 2 white ones. And should you be so lucky and have fulfilled all these 5 conditions up here, you'll get another 10 victory points down here. And this is how you play Cascadero. Again, the game ends once the first player has passed here the 49 to the 50, and then we check who has the higher score, but who has also reached here the end of their track. This game also has some different variants that you can play that makes it a little more difficult, that has additional rules. Those you can look up in the instruction manual. I won't explain them here. And here are some hints for the first game. Of course, the key is to figure out when you can score a town. And that means that you need to understand that when you place your first and single rider next to a town, you will never be able to score that town. Because whatever group you will build around this orange figure, this group has already had contact to that white town. And so you can never score a group that has already had contact to a town. You will be able from here to score the pink one, the yellow one, and also the blue one. And that, by the way, is also how you should try to really connect your figures. If you set up your figures in the right way between 4 towns, you can score 3 towns with just 4 figures. And you see that it happens here in this diamond, but also you can find them anywhere. You always have these connections, like up here. If I did this, 1, 2, 3, and 4, you see that I could not score this white town because I only had 1 figure, but I can score the pink one, I can score the yellow one, and I can score a white one. And this one, in this case, you actually see that I also fulfill the achievement now of connecting 2 white ones. Also remember that if you're the second, third, or fourth group to reach a town, you can actually move your tracker by 2. So by moving these cubes by 2, you get much further on this track. You get many more points. Now the seals are amazing. You should try to fight for the seals because, as I've shown you before, the seals can be used with just a single figure where you can actually score a town. And that might be not so exciting where I placed it here, but if you take your rider here on the figure and actually place it next to a town where somebody else had already their figures and you have a herald, now I can move my cube, the orange cube, here by 3 because I'm the second to get here and there's a herald. So I can move the orange cube here on the pink track by 1, 2, 3. If you're playing a 2-player game, you can try to get also these achievements up here. They can be done. It's not too difficult. If you're playing 3 or 4 players, it gets very difficult to actually achieve this because somebody else will always have a route that is crossing yours and you can't really get through. So you won't be able to connect 3 symbols of the same color or 5 different towns in different colors. One other thing that you have to know is that if you want to reach 50 points, you're going to have to get some achievements. Because if you look here how many points you can get, if you move all your 5 cubes all the way to the top, then you get 15 points here, 15, 15. You have 45 points from up here. You could get 10 here, so 55 points are possible on this board. But remember, for these fields here, only the first player actually gets the full points, and the second only gets 1 point less. So it's unlikely that you get always the full points. Therefore, you will have to get some points here from the achievements. Probably the easiest is always here to connect 2 cities of the same color, but maybe you can also achieve one of those up here to get some more victory points there. And that's Cascadero. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please subscribe to the channel. And next up, how to set up this game. To set up the game, you take the board and put it in the middle of the table. You'll then take the 4 heralds and put them here on the fields that have little stars on them. You'll take all the seals and put the seals into the folds on this side. You'll then take the cubes and the shield of each player's color. You put the shield here on the 0. You put 1 cube each here on the 5 different tracks. Every player takes their figures and their flags, and you're ready to go.